Is it time to get out of the markets right now? A lot of people are wondering, considering the price action on many cryptos is going nowhere. And author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and real estate mogul Robert Kiyosaki seems to think we are on the verge of the biggest crash in history, and how millions, especially in his generation of boomers, will be wiped out completely when the stock and bond markets crash. And if that were to occur, then yes, the entire crypto market is going with it. And this would make sense because it seems we are in for a very volatile summer, to say the least. As apparently Trump spoke with Vladimir Putin for about an hour and 15 minutes, and it looks like there's no sign of peace anytime soon between Ukraine and Russia, as Putin even mentioned that he wants to now retaliate, which could get ugly and toss Europe into the mix, creating more uncertainty and volatility in markets. Adding to the uncertainty, Trump tweeted that China is becoming increasingly difficult to work with. In his words, they are very tough and extremely hard to deal with. Then the federal deficit is going to continue rising and is bankrupting America. And Elon yet again used his platform to call out Congress and our elected officials, as many insiders are now speculating that Trump and Elon are no longer on good terms. And if all of that wasn't already enough, Jerome Powell, chairman of the Fed, isn't helping much in his latest statement, which we're going to cover in this video. There's just too much going on in the macro that will have a tremendous impact on all investments, whether it's the stock markets or crypto. So we'll be diving into everything and what happens next for XRP plus your crypto bags. So before we cover everything, if you haven't had a shot to already, head on over to Bull Runners HQ on Twitter or X and check out the pinned post in order to enter our $100 worth of XRP weekly giveaway. This last week's winner we announced on here and we announced in our newsletter. And in order to enter, you do need to follow through with all three steps. First, follow us on Twitter. Next, like, retweet, and comment XRP on this pinned post. Then subscribe to our daily crypto newsletter, where you're going to get access to the 23 secrets to becoming a crypto millionaire. We call this guidebook altcoin secrets. So go ahead and check that out. Either way, the value is right there. Enter your email and you're good to go. And we do completely verify if you've followed through on all three steps, and every single week the winner is random. So as always, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel, my friend. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PaulIEDEFI. And first, I really want to quickly cover the Bitcoin dominance chart because it explains what's currently happening in the underlying crypto market, which will help us get a better picture into what's going to happen with XRP with the backdrop of all of this volatility in the macro. And we're talking Trump, Elon, Ukraine, Russia, China, Jerome Powell, and the Fed. There's just too much going on that some of the major institutional players will be paying attention to, which will cause them to potentially exit the market or run for the door, while you have Robert Kiyosaki talking about how the biggest crash is coming, and he's consistently been talking about it since 2013. It's been 12 years since that point in time, and markets have rallied. So you don't always want to sell just because someone like Robert Kiyosaki talks like that. Although he might be true one day, a broken clock is also right twice a day, and they can then go ahead and brag about how they called it. But calling it on time is extremely important. So the question many people have is, should they be getting out right now? And right now, all we've seen actually coming all the way back down to that low on Bitcoin dominance of about 38%. In 2022, Bitcoin dominance has consistently been on the rise, as many altcoins have really just been considered crap coins, and I could say the term what they actually call it, but I'm not going to on this channel. And people consistently lose money on these things, as that they're not only highly inflationary, much of the tokens were basically dumped on investors in retail, and the market's just finding out that they more have an appetite for something like Bitcoin, which is actually harder to crash. Even though it does remain pretty volatile during major events, it is far less volatile and far safer safer than the majority of cryptos. And we can see that because even on these little dumps, Bitcoin dominance continues to rise. So now we're back up to 64%, even though Bitcoin has not broken above at $112,000 range. If I come over to the daily time frame, we've seen an intermediate or even a short-term downtrend, which leads me to believe that there's basically less selling in Bitcoin and more accumulation than virtually everything else in the market. That's further proven by the exchange reserves. And as you can see here over on the right hand side, on this dip where Bitcoin hit about 104,000 just the other day on May 30th, Bitcoin has consistently been leaving exchanges. This is indicative of major investors and institutions buying up Bitcoin on these dips and then withdrawing it from exchanges because they see far higher prices in the future. They'd rather hold this as a hedge against all of the uncertainty in this environment, even if Bitcoin continues to dip. So yes, it can continue dumping. However, into these dumps, investors are using it as an opportunity to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate, which in the long term is actually going to be very positive for Bitcoin. So what exactly is going to happen next for the entire crypto market? Well, let's get an understanding of what's going on in the macro backdrop. The first major piece of news is this hour-long call between Trump and Putin, which didn't turn out too well, right? We're consistently seeking peace over in the Russia and Ukraine conflict, and Donald Trump basically stated that President Putin would have to respond to recent attacks on the airfields. So in reality, they're just continuing to bomb each other. And that's because, well, one said, I have to bomb them back because they're bombing me, and then vice versa. It's literally a game of tug of war over there, and things can get pretty nasty. He still made some potential progress with Putin and Iran on nuclear weapons, but generally speaking, this does not help us to feel confident that this thing is going to end. And if things get to be more tense or escalate, then yes, markets are going to see a bit of a sell-off. And it seems Trump is really not too happy either with Jerome Powell, because now he's basically stating that interest rates will remain unchanged. And we're going to watch this video in a second, but check this out. A tweet from Donald Trump not long ago, I believe this was yesterday or today, calling Powell out for being too late, that he needs to lower the rate, the fact that he is unbelievable, and that Europe has lowered their rates 9 times, yet we are consistently keeping our rates high. Now, the reason Trump wants lowered rates is because it's going to basically bolster the economy. It's going to incentivize more growth, more borrowing, arguably more spending, create more jobs, prop up the real estate market, so on and so forth. With higher rates, people are less likely to want to borrow, and for that reason alone, Trump is quite unhappy with Powell. But let's listen to what Powell said.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. Despite heightened uncertainty, the economy is still in a solid position. The unemployment rate remains low, and the labor market is at or near maximum employment. Inflation has come down a great deal, but has been running somewhat above our 2% longer run objective. In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged. The risks of higher unemployment and higher inflation appear to have risen, and we believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments.
And then to add fuel to all this fire, not only do Americans have less access to capital, Elon is now saying America is going to bankrupt extremely quickly. Again, as many are speculating that he's no longer on good terms with Trump because of this major, big, beautiful bill, which I believe many people are now in the middle on, even people that are Trump supporters, because we don't need to be spending that much money. That said, here is what Elon had to share. And it's important to note that this was back in September of 2024, and things are likely only getting worse. However, he did retweet this just a bit ago. So let's listen to what he said back then, which remains very relevant today.
America is also going bankrupt extremely quickly. And nobody seems to, everyone seems to be sort of whistling past the graveyard on this one. You know, the Defense Department budget is a very big budget, okay? It's $1 trillion a year, DoD, Intel, it's $1 trillion. And interest payments on the national debt just exceeded the Defense Department budget. They're over $1 trillion a year, just in interest, and rising. We're adding $1 trillion to our debt, which our kids and grandkids are going to have to pay somehow every 3 months. And then soon it's going to be every 2 months, and then every month. And then the only thing we'll be able to pay is interest. And if this is, it's just, it's just like a person at scale that has racked up too much credit card debt, and this does not have a good ending.
And so if anything, what he shared back then remains even more relevant today, as he called this an atrocious abomination of a bill. But the question remains, will we see the biggest crash come sooner rather than later, and millions of boomers wiped out on their stocks and bonds in this crash? He continues to remain adamant about the fact that if you are proactive and you buy silver, you buy Bitcoin, and you buy gold, you're likely to come out okay, especially through the summer. And although China is extremely difficult to deal with under the Trump tariff threats, people and markets actually took this as very positive, even though it sounds negative coming from Donald Trump, the president of the United States, that China is very tough and hard to deal with. Markets are actually up after this post because the tariff threats appear to have lost all credibility for investors. In other words, that form of uncertainty seems to be off the table. And in a situation where investors were truly scared, the price action would be pretty down on something like Bitcoin. Same when you come over to something like the S&P 500. You can see that we're back up to local highs that we made on May 20th. And it looks like we're ready to explode to the upside. So markets aren't really looking from the price action or technical perspective like they want to continue to dump. If anything, this is actually even more bullish. The fact that under this macroeconomic backdrop, that there is a lot of desire or demand for riskier asset classes. There's a lot of underlying strength, and that's the signal I'm getting. So looking at something like XRP, if I go ahead and pop over onto this chart, anything back above the $2.35 to 40 cent range is going to be very bullish. Anything below the $2.10 to 5 cent range is going to be relatively bearish. Right now we're kind of in no man's land, just chilling in a range, making lower lows and lower highs, but we're not really breaking out or breaking down. If anything, this thing is just building a long, strong range. So I wouldn't jump the gun extend yourself in this current market environment. Don't always just listen to the news. Pay attention to the charts, because that's where you can actually get an edge against everyone else in the market. And that's it for this video, folks. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe. And if you're wanting to learn how to do technical analysis and look at charts, every Tuesday I host a live call only for our community members at Altcoin Pro University. You can check that out by going to altcoinpro.com. Watch this quick video that will show you everything you get on the other side. The value is bar none the best in the space. This is the best crypto education that you could possibly ever get for that price point. And we even teach you how to earn your money back in the crypto markets. So it's essentially free. And there's literally no risk to joining. You just take a 14-day trial. If we can't help you to earn on one of those DeFi yield quick wins, then ask for your money back. Not a big deal. This isn't for everyone, but for those of you guys who are serious, for those of you guys who are committed, for those of you who want to be crypto millionaires, this is it. We're very serious about this platform and helping you succeed as a crypto investor. And if you're on my live calls, I will be answering your questions with you live on everything when it comes to charting. So thanks so much for watching the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Check out Altcoin Pro. Goodbye.